On today's Locked On Jayhawks, the two deep, the depth chart is officially out for KU as game week gets closer with KU versus Lindenwood.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up? I'm Derek Johnson. You can find me on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe. Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Jayhawks and making it your first listen every day. Thank you to the everydayers catching each and every show. We're going to be going over the two deep, the offense, the defense, maybe some surprises, maybe some stuff that was expected and what it can tell us for KU football headed into their first game of the season against Lindenwood. And we're going to have a little discussion with the Lindenwood game. Early line is out. KU over a 40-point favorite and being just 2 days away from KU against Lindenwood. We'll get to all that on today's episode, which is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We're going to start with stuff on the depth chart here. We're going to start with the offense, and then we'll move to the defense and the special teams here. And if you're on our YouTube channel, we've got I guess the picture version, the screenshot version of it coming at you here. So the offense for KU, the offensive line was certainly, maybe the biggest, question mark, I guess you would say, just how it was going to be shuffled around, because you start with the quarterback. We knew Jalen Daniels was going to be the starter, right? As long as he was healthy, he was going to be the starter. I guess there is a question about with the backup quarterback spot, because you look at the competition between Cole Ballard and Isaiah Marshall, and the fact that Cole Ballard is listed as the backup should be a little bit telling there. But I still kind of remain that, like, maybe once we get midway through the season, it would not shock me if Isaiah Marshall eventually is the backup. And I will say the coaching staff doesn't update this depth chart as accurately as the season goes on. So you might not even see Isaiah Marshall pop up as the backup come week 6 or something, but it's entirely possible. It's also possible that Cole Ballard would be like the in-game backup, is the more experienced guy. But, like, let's say Jalen Daniels got injured and then you had a bye week and then you had a game after that. Like, maybe you go with the higher ceiling at that point with Isaiah Marshall. I don't know. But for now, Cole Ballard is listed as the backup there. Same thing with running back. Not a lot of questions. Devin Neal, Daniel Highshaw. I guess the bigger question there with running back is who's the third string, but we don't get that information because this is a 2 deep, not a 3 deep. Not a lot of oars this year, by the way, which we had a lot of last year. So that's kind of nice with all this. Receivers, again, nothing really crazy. When you have Luke Grimm, Lawrence Arnold, and Quentin Skinner, we knew those were going to be the starters. The one thing of note here, because you look at the backups on the 2 deep, Doug Emelian, figured that would be the case. Trevor Wilson, figured that would be the case. I think, if anything, coming into maybe the fall, I was thinking Doug Emelian would really be your 4th receiver, but now it feels like that would more so be Trevor Wilson. But instead of Keaton Kubeka on the 2 deep, which he was last year, and I don't remember, they might have made an extra spot on the 2 deep for him to get there, but Torrey Laughlin, who's kind of your running back receiver hybrid, has officially made the 2 deep as a receiver, which I think is cool. He's been certainly an underrated player and has a lot of usage, a lot of roles in different ways, whether it's special teams, whether it's the occasional play on offense or something like that. And he's just filled in wherever KU's needed him to. So cool that he makes it on the 2 deep there in his final season with KU. But yeah, that offensive line, that's kind of the big one here for that KU offense. So Bryce Cabeldue, interestingly enough, will be the starting left tackle. The senior, who has been a multi-year starter for KU at the right tackle position, had his best year last year, and he's kind of gotten better each and every year that he's been at KU so far. But what was interesting was last spring, they tried him a little bit at left tackle before Dominic Pooney kind of, took down that role. And he said that he wanted to move because he was uncomfortable. Well, maybe it was just more training this offseason. For whatever reason, he moves over to left tackle and seems like he's comfortable now. So I feel good about that, as long as he is comfortable doing it, which I don't think he would be starting there if he wasn't comfortable doing it. The backup's Nolan Gorsica, and I think Nolan Gorsica could be one of your first linemen off the – because when you look at the 2 deep, the starters are important. But as far as the backups go, it doesn't tell the full story because realistically, you're going to have 2 or 3 backups that are going to play like most of the backup snaps. So like Gorsica is one of these guys where he can play guard and tackle. He's only listed as the backup left tackle. But if a guard goes down, okay, it's probably Daryl Simmons coming in for him. But then if another guard goes down, instead of James Livingston, who's listed as backup left guard, it might be Nolan Gorsica. I don't know. So you have Cabeldue at left tackle, Gorsica backup left tackle. And again, I think he's kind of a backup tackle and guard for you. Michael Ford at left guard, one of the most underrated guards across the conference. James Livingston, who's been a tackle before, now he's in at left guard there. You look at the right guard position, Kobe Bain, sounds like he's had a good camp, and I think he's going to provide some power for that offense, running the ball behind his back. Daryl Simmons Jr., I think you probably look at somebody who could probably play either guard position for you. And when you look at last year's KU team, Armaj Reed-Adams, along with Kobe Baines and Michael Ford, you basically had 3 guards who were playing starter-level snaps. You basically had 6 offensive linemen who played starter-level snaps. Some of that was allowed because Armaj Reed-Adams could play guard and tackle. I don't know that you're going to do that with Daryl Simmons, but the point is there's snaps there for 6th and maybe even 7th offensive lineman if you divvy those up. And so I think Simmons will play some snaps there. And we already talked about, if you're an everydayer, you heard it, Lance Leipold on a recent press conference talking about, we could rotate in Simmons here and there and feel good about where we're at. And then Kobe Baines is more rested, ready to go for the fourth quarter. And that would apply for the rest of the season as well if you're, limiting reps and using him in important roles. So I think that's something else that when you're looking at these backups, like I said, you're really more so looking at which backups are part of that 2 or 3 most trusted. They're going to come in and fill in whatever position is needed. I think Gorsica is one of them. I think Simmons is another one. You look at the right tackle spot, Logan Brown and Dre Dorian behind him. I think Dorian's a very versatile offensive lineman. At points, we've heard him getting snaps at center, now, backing up at right tackle. So I think that's a good sign in terms of his flexibility and how he could try to make an impact. But again, same kind of thing with Logan Brown. Like I kind of talked about this, we did throughout the offseason, that if Logan Brown can hit his ceiling, it completely changes and adds to what this KU offense can be and what this KU offensive line can be. And so the fact that he has to move over to right tackle, maybe that's a bit worrisome. But there were some comments at Lance Leipold's press conference on Monday that was really talking up Logan Brown. And if he's more comfortable playing right tackle, like you'd rather a guy be an A at right tackle than be a C at left tackle. And so if this is the more comfortable roles, I think you like the experience of Bryce Cabeldue, you like the talent of Logan Brown, and then maybe Logan Brown eventually is the left tackle next season when Cabeldue graduates, or maybe it's a guy like Calvin Clemens who's not on this 2 deep, but was recovering from an injury, and you figure will take another big stride this season in his redshirt freshman season for KU. But the most important, you might have noticed I skipped over it, that center position of the offensive line, not necessarily most important. I don't know, maybe it is because you're calling out all the plays. But most prominent because of that's where the biggest question was with position battle. And it ends up being Bryce Foster as the 1, Shane Baumgartner as the 2. Now, as we continue to look back at some of the comments that were made by Lance Leipold and Jeff Grimes, it's entirely possible some of them were motivation to just try to make sure that Bryce Foster was giving each and everything that he had to win this job and that they knew he was going to have it. And that they wanted him to emerge not just as a player, but as a leader and a lot of these other things. It's entirely possible that's the case. But I do think Baumgartner set himself up that he maybe is in that group with Nolan Gorsica and Daryl Simmons, that they would be kind of the first ones that would hit the field if one of the starters went down. And so you feel good about the backup there, but I think it's good news that Bryce Foster ends up winning the job, just because when you look at the body, the athleticism, the power, the SEC experience that Bryce Foster brings to the table, the fact that he earned that starting position at center, and I guess you could say the same thing with Logan Brown for a highly touted former recruit. If you're living up to the potential and you want to talk about raising the ceiling of this offensive line, raising the ceiling of this offense, those are 2 guys that can do it. So that is the offensive depth chart. Let's get to the defensive side of the football. Let's also get to the special team side of it, because certainly if you were looking there, the kicker battle ended up being a bit of a surprise for us. So we'll talk about all those coming up on Locked On Jayhawks. This episode of the show is brought to you by 5 Hour. I've got a young baby daughter, and so I am up late at night checking on her, or I might be up at a random time during the day. I might just hit that tired wall after having a poor night of sleep. And so you need that little push to get you through. Well, with 5 Hour Energy, it's the brand hardworking people like me have trusted for over 20 years to give them alert, energized feeling that we need to get through our busy, hectic day. You always know where to find 5 Hour Energy shots, right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. You can stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure that you never run out of your delicious, energizing 5 Hour Energy shots. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5, not the spelled out, so 5 Hour Energy with the number 5.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. So the code's not good on subscription orders either. Just go to 5hourenergy.com. Again, that promo code Locked On CFB, standing for Locked On College Football, but Locked On CFB. All right, continuing on here with Locked On Jayhawks. Thank you to every dayers tuning in to each and every show. Of course, you can make your second listen, the Locked On College Football Show, for this week. Okay, what about the two deep for the defensive side of the ball and the special teams for KU? So on the defensive side of the ball, no surprises at one defensive end spot, which will be the strong defensive end spot with Jeremy Robinson and Dylan Woodkey. Both of them should play. Both of them should rotate. I think back 2 years ago, a lot of snaps to both guys, pretty close to being even between like Malcolm Lee and Jeremy Robinson. I think that'll be the case this time, but Robinson plays more and Woodkey plays less, and keep both guys well rested throughout the season, and I think that'll be good for both players. The other defensive end spot, Dean Miller, sounded like he was, winning that battle all the way through. Also good, he's only redshirt senior or junior. So, I mean, if he has that good of a year that he gets to go pro after it, that's a great problem to have, but otherwise you could have another year with him. And how about this? DJ Warner is a true freshman making that backup spot. He's going to play. He's going to get playing time as a rush defensive end. And, as much as you love the redshirt, your freshmen when they come in and get their bodies fully up to snuff and everything, a guy like DJ Warner, if all goes well, he is such a highly recruited player that he's like, there's a good chance he's not going to be in school for long enough for you to use the red shirt, if that makes sense. That's something Bill Self talks about sometimes, but I don't know, DJ Warner could be so good over these next couple of seasons that he goes pro after his junior season, or he goes pro after his true senior season, which if he would have redshirted, he would have just gone pro after his redshirt junior season. So it's whatever. And I think he'll make a big impact on this team. And then defensive tackles, DJ Withers, heard a lot of great things about him in camp. Sounds like he could be ready to break out. How about Tommy Dunn winning that other defensive tackle spot? But Caleb Taylor, he'll play a ton of snaps for this team. So will Keenan Caldwell, which interesting that Caldwell made the two deep over Javier Darrett. You brought in Javier Darrett, and at the time, it felt like a really big addition for you, the transfer from North Dakota State. He'll still play. He'll still be a rotational guy, but, maybe when they first brought in Darrett, part of the thought was maybe even that he could be a starter as a veteran player. And again, he'll still play as a fifth defensive tackle, but not nearly as much if you were the second or third guy. You'll also get some snaps to maybe one of two or maybe both of those guys with the freshmen that are kind of back there. It seems like Blake Harold, his name keeps popping up a lot. So defensive tackle, they play a lot of guys, and that'll continue to happen. At the Hawk position, Jason Gilliam earns the starting spot. Feels like he got healthy at the right time and everything went together there. And Alex Reich will be his backup. Other linebacker spots, Cornell Wheeler with Tywan Berryhill as the backup. And then you got J.B. Brown and Tristan Fletcher as the backup there. This one is one where even though Tywan Berryhill is listed as backup in one and not the other, I expect Tywan Berryhill to be the backup linebacker to both guys. He'll play a lot of snaps still. Obviously, he's coming off a year where he's playing through injury, but he had a Pro Football Focus grade of below 30 a season ago. So you're looking at him to be healthy. You're looking at him to earn more playing time with his performance on there. But I feel great about the athleticism, the hitting ability, the run stopping ability of those two guys with Cornell Wheeler and J.B. Brown. And Wheeler was actually named one of the captains for the team too, which shows, as you're talking about a guy with Cornell Wheeler who brings, I think, more athleticism, and I think it's even more for J.B. Brown. But with Cornell Wheeler, if you're comparing this linebacker unit to last year's, he brings more athleticism and thump. Part of the question that they were having during the offseason was, but who can replace the leadership of a guy like Rich Miller? He got everybody in the right spot. He was such a good leader for this team. And just because he was named captain doesn't guarantee that he's as good as those things as Rich Miller was, but it kind of shows you that he's doing a good job at it, right? So I think that's a good sign there with both those guys. And then you look at the corner position, Kobe Bryant with Melo Dotson, your two starters, obviously. We expected McGee to be the backup, the former transfer from LSU, and that ends up being the case. He'll be the third corner and probably fill in for either guy. I was going to be curious who won that fourth corner spot, though, between Jameel Croft and Jalen Todd. Croft, the redshirt freshman, one of your highest recruits in the class of 2023. Todd, one of your highest recruits in the class of 2024. Todd ends up winning it out as a true freshman. Now, I still feel good about the future of both players, but and both will probably play in a rotational role at the back end of the depth chart this year. But I do think that is interesting to see. And I mean, it's not often that this staff will get, like, I think last year, the only true freshman who was on the two deep offense or defense was Keaton Kubeka. And that was because they made an exemption and they had like 7 receivers on there instead of 6. And now you have 2 listed on the two deep on defense with both Todd and Warner. And at the safety position, Marvin Grant, OJ Burrows, expected starters. The 2 backups, Devin Dye, Jalen Dye, kind of the expected backups. The one question was going to be, does Mason Ellis crack into this? I still think Ellis will play. He'll play a lot of special teams. Who knows how close he is to the Dye brothers, but certainly we knew both of them would be starting. And then you move over to special teams. Kickoff guy, Tabor Allen, that's always been the case. That's not a big change. But the place kicking, that was a big, it felt like it was Charlie Weinrich or Owen P. Burgertis. It felt like out of spring, Owen P. Burgertis had the lead. And then you started hearing some scuttlebutt that maybe it was Charlie Weinrich with the lead. In the end, Tabor Allen ends up the most consistent. And I think that's something to keep in mind because that's something Lance Leipold said. He was the most consistent. They value consistency above anything when you look at this. Like, if they have the option between starting the guy who's consistent every day and starting the guy who has the highest ceiling but has bigger floors, they're going to start the consistent guy. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that because I think from a cultural perspective, developing that inside your program of like, you have to work hard every day, you have to be consistent every day is a good thing that you want messaging around the program, right? And so Tabor Allen wins the job. And, it's hard to say who's the best and how this is going to go on during the season. So I do know Tabor Allen because he's been doing the kickoffs, has a very strong leg. So maybe that gives you potential to hit longer field goals. Damon Greaves, the backup or the punter. So that remains there. And Luke Hosford stays as the long snapper. When you look at the return men, Trevor Wilson and Luke Grimm as the punt returners. I wonder if this is going to be a thing where it's like, if you're in a situation where you need a fair catch, you throw Luke Grimm out there. If you're in a situation where you think you're going to have a chance to return it, you throw Trevor Wilson out there. Obviously, people will have bad flashbacks, PTSD to the Kansas State game. Try to have more good flashbacks. Try to think more of the UCF game if you could. Try to be on the positive side, I guess, there. And then for the kick returners, Wilson going to get playing time there. Savion Morrison, I think that's a good opportunity to use him there, get him in the open field to some of his speed. And then obviously Graves will be the holder. So that's the two deep for KU. Some surprises, some things that we weren't totally sure about, some things to be expected, but just makes it feel like it's even closer because it is. It's 2 days away from KU Lindenwood. Let's discuss the game a little bit and what that 2 days out means on Locked On Jayhawks. This episode is brought to you by Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Locked On Jayhawk fans, let's take a moment, give you a heads up on that brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do, Ultimate College Football Head Coach. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Sounds like something you might be interested in. Can you imagine being the head coach of the Jayhawks, or if you want to take over, a smaller program and build them up to excellence? From recruiting players to hiring coaches and seeing the camps and scholarships given out, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Are you going to be able to handle that pressure? And here's what is really cool about the game. You're responsible for calling the offensive plays during the games. So you're going to have an impact on how your team does. That's going to have a future impact, how you're recruiting, all those sorts of things. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free. It has no ads and is 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Jayhawk fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk. It's going to get your team off to the strong start that you need. So download the game by visiting ultimate-cfb.com. That's ultimate-cfb.com, or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. I'm finishing things up on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks because we're getting closer to the game here. I am a bit under the weather, so thanks for bearing with me today. All right, we're 2 days out from the game. Early line on the game has KU at, well, I think it came out as a 43.5 point favorite. I was looking at FanDuel this morning, and it was already up to 44.5. So people are betting Kansas on this one, which I don't think Lindenwood's that great of a team. So, I mean, what's the number that I'd be comfortable with it going up to? That might be an interesting question. Like, I don't know, 56-7. So if you get like 48.5, but even then, that's, low margin for error. But I think Kansas is going to be able to run the ball on them very well. And so even when you bring the backups in, when it's Daniel Highshaw, when it's Harry Stewart, when it's Savion Morrison, you should be able to score and stuff. But still, once you get into that 40-point line, like the game could easily run out of time and you win 45-3 and you don't cover the spread, but you still had a dominant win, right? So it's always dangerous when you're doing those. I'm going to have more fun with the prop bets, which we will do some prop bets on our preview show on Thursday for the game, which will come on FanDuel. So anyway, 2 days out, I found this is interesting. A couple, one stat that I think will have a big determining factor on the season. So Kansas averaged giving up 2 rushing touchdowns per game last season. 2 rushing touchdowns per game. UCLA last year was the best defense at preventing rushing touchdowns. They gave up 5 total. Now, I don't say that to be like, Kansas has to make the leap to being the best defense at preventing rushing touchdowns in the country. That would be a little asinine to expect that or to ask for that. But you can see there's a big gulf there. And can you narrow that gulf from what the top is to what you've given up? We've talked a lot about the run defense. Can it be better? And it got a lot better last year from where it was the year before. If you can make another stride this year, it's going to help your pass defense. It's going to help your pass rush. It's going to put you in more favorable situations. And it's also going to prevent teams from just running down your throat. And for Kansas, with, I think, more athletic, bigger thumpers of linebackers, a defensive tackle unit that I feel good about, I think the pieces are there that you can take another step forward as a run defense. Obviously, they got to do it. They got to show it on the field. All this stuff is hoopla and hype to where we're at. But that is one area when you're looking at where can Kansas get better? Because there's certain areas you go in, you're out, and you're like, well, I don't know if they're going to reach that level. Or like maybe that was a little bit lucky this year. You look at the red zone defense, that should get better. You look at turnovers, they could get better. They were closer to even. Look at the run defense. Those are areas that KU can get better, needs to get better, and I think will get better this season to have a pretty special year. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. We'll have our Kansas Lindenwood preview later in the week, so you're not going to want to miss it. Make sure you're tuned in on LOJ. See you next time.